It's time for the polling station, and this is one of these weeks where we can just basically cut to the chase and get straight to it with Paul Krishnamurty, Neil Channing and William Kedjanyi. I'm Johnny Ward. It's been an amazing week in politics. Boris Johnson, in my view, has covered himself in absolute disgrace on many, many levels. I think they're investigating 12 potential parties at Downing Street. We got the Grey report out. We got despicable comments from Boris in the direction of Keir Starmer at Westminster, but he is still in charge. So it is the polling station, and over the next half an hour, we're going to discuss his impending demise or otherwise. William Kedjanyi, how are you? Tell me what's going on in the betting world with Star Sports and politics this week.
Keeping very busy, say with our betting markets. So as I sit here, Johnson is 8-13 to leave this year. That's changed from 4-6. He's 5-1 to go in 2023, 9-4 to go in 2024 or later. He's now freeze on not to be the Tory leader at the next general election. He's 2-1 to make it there. We also have a new market. Will there be a confidence vote triggered in Boris Johnson before the 1st of March? We opened up 5-2. We're now 2-1. On the other side, you can get freeze on against that. And to leave his role as Prime Minister by the 30th of June, which I think we could broadly say is the summer or good summer point, he's 11-8. So a few moves here and there.
Okay, we haven't even mentioned Northern Ireland as well. Paul Givan about to resign because of the mess that is the protocol, and which obviously is an extension of Brexit. And because of Brexit, Paul Krishnamurty has had to leave Greece and is in a hotel in Manchester.
That is right. That is right. Unfortunately, we Brits are only entitled to spend 90 days out of every 180 in the Schengen area. So that means that I have to come back and forth throughout the year now. So
I had naturally assumed that you were flying directly to the Ukraine to pick up your rifle, but I obviously got that wrong.
Neil, you may as well stay while you're there. What did you make of Nadine Dorry's unbelievable contribution to the debate subsequent to the Grey report?
I mean, I don't know. It's people were sort of saying that, you know, just putting Nadine on the TV as your main spokesperson is a dead cat thing to do, because, you know, she looks like she's spent a bit too much time in Annie's bar before she comes on the telly. There was one particular interview I think that she did on Channel 4 News with Paul's namesake, and I didn't think she looked drunk in that. I just thought she looked kind of the same as she always does, really, a bit. But there was that, I don't know, the people caught her still, didn't they, from PMQs this week, of her sort of looking up longingly. It's one of those things, isn't it? If you can find somebody that looks at you in the way that Nadine looked at Boris, then, you know, you found a love match.
Have you found her, Neil?
Well, I don't know about that, but she definitely is one of the people who, whoever is the leader of the Tory party after Boris Johnson, it doesn't matter who it is, they're not going to give Nadine Dorries a job. And there's 2 or 3 others in the cabinet at the moment that are like that. And they're most likely the ones that get wheeled out when he needs defending. Interesting today, though, I'd been on the phone for a bit and I missed it, that Munira Mirza's quit. Now, she was the number 10 chief of policy, basically. So originally it would have been sort of her and Dominic Cummings would be, I don't want to say the brains behind the outfit, maybe the, you know, pushing the direction of policy. And obviously with Cummings gone, she became very powerful for somebody that we hardly ever really heard about as a general public. If you ask most people in the street, they probably never heard of her. But I think it's quite a significant departure, really. And it makes you kind of wonder that now there's been talk about the Australian coming back in to turn the ship around. God, that's bad. I've forgotten his name now. Paul will tell me.
Linton Crosby.
Linton Crosby. Thank you. I don't know. I mean, you wonder kind of where the influence is coming from. In a lot of prime ministerial, you know, careers, you get a lot of help from your chancellor to kind of push things in the direction you want to go. But I feel like Rishi Sunak is still doing his best to attempt to distance himself.
Yeah.
He's more worried. The only election he's worried about is the one with 120,000 octogenarian male right-wingers in the Tory party. He's not worried about the 2024 one right now.
Yeah, what do you make of his interview with the BBC, William?
it's interesting because it puts him in a potentially quite tricky spot if he wants to really get out quickly and aggressively, right? And he wants to sort of detach himself as much as he can from today's various cost of living increases, all of which are very, very severe, before any sort of leadership election, just mainly because he is on record now, and it's not for the first time, as very much clearly stating that I support the Prime Minister and I don't think he's a liar.
He's out to 7-4 to be next Prime Minister. Sorry, he's out to see 7-4 to be next Prime Minister, and I presume he's still short price to be the next leader of the Conservatives.
Yeah, he is. And I think it's also worth remembering that for this, you know, in terms of the runners and riders, or in terms of the people that need pleasing, it's Tory MPs first, then the membership, and he's still got great positive membership for now. But there might be a window, and it's quite possibly closing on him, because these sorts of things are definitely sound bites that can and will be used against him in future, and it's gonna look very much like a Go style knifing or whatever if, say, in a couple of weeks he decides to go for it, or whatever, if we reach 54 letters really quickly or
something. Then you think, I thought it was quite interesting, the difference with the energy crisis, I think it was fair enough to call it that. Mm-hmm. The difference in the French situation, where obviously they have an election in the summer, and the situation in the UK, where Rishi Sunak is obviously just concerned about the election to be the next Tory leader. So that means that in France, you get a sort of populist decision to tax the hell out of EDF, the national energy company, and put that money into keeping the energy price rises at 4%. Whereas in the UK, we don't worry at the moment about the general population, because we don't have a general election until 2024. We're just worrying about appealing to the Tory membership, who want to see tight fiscal control of government spending, and they don't want to see high taxation on business. So I feel like it was very political.
They are giving money away, though. I mean, they're selling it as, we're going to knock £200 off your bill, and we're going to have tax discounts.
Yeah,
I mean,
you need to.
I think that in doing that, in the way that they are spinning that, that's a massive risk for Sunak, because he sounds like that is going to annoy a lot of Tory members, the idea of like intervening in the market.
I hear what you're saying, although I think if you read the small print, I think it's something like a third of the people that would get the £150 discount off of their council tax, it'll be cancelled out by the amount of money that they would have got off of their council tax for being poor in the first place. So if you're getting the, I don't know what it's called, the council tax surcharge, is it? I don't know. I've got the wrong. I don't know. If you're getting that money, then you don't get the discount. Yeah. There's actually a really small percentage of council taxpayers that get the £150. The £200 is a loan, although they've decided to call it a discount, and you pay it back £50 a year over 4 years. So it's not really
I think it's
costing the government too much.
I think for him, it's the worst of both worlds, because on the one hand, it will look to Tory members, to right wingers, like populist sort of thing they accuse Labour of, you know,
Marxism, interfering in the market.
Marxism, absolutely, Marxism, right? Yeah. But in reality, it won't.
It's not really. It's fiddling. It's not doing
like
anything.
Furlough. It's not like the furlough, or even Eat Out to Help Out, where people are visibly receiving something in their pocket and saying, "Oh, look, it's that nice Mr. Sunak doing it." I actually think he's had a really bad week, and I am beginning to get very cold on Sunak. The other thing I was going to say about him is that, look, this move against Boris is orchestrated, right? We must agree on that. The leaks are orchestrated, right? And the obvious beneficiary, the person that I have always thought was the intended beneficiary of that, was Rishi Sunak. Well, in that case, if that is the case, where are these names? Surely, you know, the people who are resigning, the people who seem to be doing the, I mean, you know, Munira Mirza is very powerful. Her husband, Dougie Smith, is very powerful, but they're not MPs, right? And I can totally see that maybe the Tufton Street Mafia have abandoned Boris Johnson and would like Rishi Sunak. But do they really, do the events of the last few weeks suggest that they really carry that many MPs with them?
But was it, I mean, I could be wrong, but the point I've made on here before, I think, is that they just don't want to do it yet. I mean, Rishi Sunak, if he becomes the leader of the Tory party and the Prime Minister, he doesn't have to bed in a long time before the next general election. The public have already got some kind of appreciation of what he's about and what he looks like. They might be wrong because they might think of him as Charlie Chuckett about because of the furlough and whatever, when really he's going to be a, you know, strict Thatcherite fiscal hawk. But you know, that doesn't matter if the public have got it wrong. In terms of when he's coming into a general election, people have seen enough to an extent to make their mind up. Compared with someone like, I don't know, Tom Tugendhat or something, who they just couldn't pick out in a lineup of 20 people. They know who Rishi Sunak is. So he doesn't have to come in too quickly. He can let Boris Johnson own these upcoming terrible local election results. And he can, as long as he comes in before the next budget, then he can start giving money away. You know, he had 20 billion in fiscal headway in the last budget, which he kept up his sleeve. He didn't spend. He can do a typical kind of Thatcher period, Linton Crosby playbook, tax cutting budget just before the election. No problem at all. They've got potential to do that. The economy could be improving by then.
But whoever is behind this coup, and whoever it's intended to benefit, they want Boris Johnson out now, right? They are really throwing everything at it. And 54 MPs aren't doing their bidding for them. I do think they will. I agree that after the local elections, there's a whole big swathe of Tory MPs who will do what you're saying, Neil. They think, let's just leave it, let Boris take the hit, let's wait for that. But I don't think that whoever their chosen beneficiary of, and I think that is Rishi Sunak, doesn't seem to have the numbers. And it would make he's the loser. He's the loser of the longer the wait, the worse for him, the better for someone like him.
If you're a fairly bog standard backbench Tory MP, you're not going to be in cabinet. You're never really going to be a high flyer in the Tory party, but you've got a seat that's, you know, looking a bit dodgy at the moment, maybe a 4,000 majority. You might as well, you know, from your job's point of view, you might as well wait and let Boris Johnson suffer, you know, the local election results, because that's better for your chances of holding on to your seat.
Just if I can, bring you in, William. And Penny Mordaunt is into 9-1. Actually, I think tipped at 14 to be the next leader of the party last week by Paul. What did you make, William, of the body language of the Conservative MPs during the debating of the Grey Report, particularly Boris's ridiculous the Jimmy Savile comments, and just the reaction of people in his own party to that, which Sir Keir Starmer spoke about afterwards? What did you make of the body language of those around him in general?
I think the body language did confirm that there's a bit of a siege mentality around Johnson now, in the sense that people who need him for their jobs, i.e. one particular Nadine Dorries as an example, are definitely, you know, showing their support a bit more. But you can also tell there's a lot of energy on the Labour benches too. And I think that has been more notable in recent weeks. And I've had my various opinions on Keir Starmer and his ability in sort of the theatrical elements of politics, but recently you can tell the support has been more vocal. So I don't think it was so whilst I think it was notable that Johnson's getting some more support, I think they're all part of the Save Boris group. We know that it's around 100 strong anyway. There was still some sniping from certain backbenchers, and a lot of, you know, oohs and ahs, particularly when those questions from May, etc., from Aaron Bell came in. And whilst he's got people backing him, you know, I don't think it's an immovable wall. I think it's not a huge change. And I think it sort of sums up the situation, or the way I see it at least, which is that in the short term, I think he might be escaping, you know, from this week into the next and from the next week on. but in the longer term, I still think there are these big icebergs which might take him down.
Well, yes, okay. So this reminds me a bit of the episode of Succession where there was the heave against the dad or whatever, and people are afraid to say what they're going to do and so forth. Compelling TV. What's happened in the Conservative Party now? Because from the outside looking in, I have no idea how Boris is still Prime Minister of Great Britain. I always looked in Great Britain as a place where probity was top of the list in terms of prime ministers. If something went wrong, they resigned. Now you can why have one scandal when 2 dozen are better? I don't get how he's still there. I don't get what's going on. Well, I don't get what's going on in the Conservative Party, because there are people who obviously want his job, but they don't know if now is the time to go for it or if they have the support. And I find I found the body language very interesting, because there are a lot of very awkward faces there, but they don't seem to really know what they're doing.
Well, just quickly on that, you've got half or three quarters of the answer there, which is namely that they don't know if they've got support, they don't know if they've got the numbers to oust him, and they really don't want to risk him winning a confidence vote. That's number one. Number two, also, if there are MPs who are wanting to run for leadership, they haven't yet done their behind the scenes work. They haven't yet got things such as the op-eds, they haven't yet got the campaign teams going, their websites, they haven't yet sorted out their donors, etc. All of this stuff really matters. We saw the difference Gavin Williamson alone made to Johnson becoming Prime Minister, and the likes of, and I'm just throwing a few names out here, but the likes of, say, a Tobias Elwood or a Tom Tugendhat or a Penny Mordaunt, they'd want to think about that closely. And I think we know as a given, Truss and Sunak have definitely thought about this for quite a long time, but it doesn't mean that their teams are ready yet, and you have to tread carefully, especially if you're in the cabinet. How
Neil is Starmer 7-1 to be the next Prime Minister? Can you explain that to me?
Well, I mean, I personally, I'm quite bearish about Starmer's chances of
why so?
Getting the most seats in the next general election. I think his basic route to becoming the next Prime Minister is that in terms of becoming the winner of the next general election and becoming the Prime Minister after a 2024 election. For me, the best route for him in that is that they're not the biggest party, but Boris Johnson can't find anybody to ally with in a hung parliament. But of course, there's a massive chance that Johnson's gone before then. I did the Johnson out market. I have been following that quite carefully, because the day of the Sue Gray report, the night before the report dropping, the price touched like 1.9 at one stage, and then when the report dropped, suddenly people were prepared to bet Johnson to go in 2022 at 1.57. He made a concerted effort to get back to 1.8 a couple of days ago, but every time any money goes above kind of 1.72, 3, 4, 5, 6, it always gets nipped back in. I see now it's currently quoted at it's quite a big spread at the moment. It's 158 to 165. So the 8 to 13 with Star is a fair price if you think he can go this year. But you'd think with the press he's had and with Munira Mirza's resignation, it's kind of amazing that he was. We did the polling station 2 weeks ago, and he was 4 to 9 to go this year. Since then, we've had the Gray report. His chief of policy has resigned. People are falling away from him. Letters are going in. You would think his chance of surviving. I know time is passing. 2 weeks is a long time in politics, apparently. But it feels to me like people are thinking. The market seems to be thinking, well, he's kind of got away with that so far. He's obviously not quitting. Everyone knows that. So that they do need to get the 54 letters and then get him out there. Now, Paul might say, I wonder why they haven't put the 54 letters in. Presumably, it's not because they haven't got 54 people. It's because they're not certain that they'd win the vote. And if they don't win the vote under the current rules of the 1922 committee, they can't do another vote of no confidence for a year.
No, I agree. I agree with that, right? But what I would say is that look at the people who have put letters in, right? They are the sort of people who either have had their career not really looking for a job. Theresa May, that would not Theresa. She hasn't gone in yet. I'm sure she would. David Davis, Andrew Mitchell, right?
Yes,
Aaron Bell's already burnt his bridges, right? Will Ragg has already burnt his bridges, so that's fine. I think
we haven't seen a huge number of ERG people, have we?
No,
That's
they're
the real
waiting.
thing.
They're sitting on their hands. I don't believe they act as a faction. Those people. A lot of those people, like Jacob Rees-Mogg, are hardcore Boris Johnson supporters.
Sure,
but some aren't. But I think more the point is that if I'm right and that the beneficiary of the coup is supposed to be Rishi Sunak, then I would expect there to be a whole series of people, of MPs, who we could read between the lines and watch what they were saying, watch what they were doing. Like if you think of the Blair Brown thing going back, you had the Blairites and the Brownites, and not everybody walked around with a badge on, but it was obvious. It was just obvious. And when like Tony Blair got in trouble, there'd be certain characters who'd be on the telly plunging the knife in, right? There doesn't seem to be. I'm just sceptical that Rishi Sunak has a whole load of MPs behind him. I'm not. I think he has the Tufton Street people behind him, right? And you know that Cummings' his network, but I'm not actually convinced that there is a big movement for him.
On a slightly different tangent to that, what do we think? Do we think Liz Truss really got the COVID this week, or did she feel like it was a good week to get your head down?
I had this debate with Boris at the
time. Say anything from there.
Yeah, when Boris got COVID, I was strong odds against he did have COVID in the first place. I was like, it's far too convenient. But he was practically almost dead, apparently.
And
he was almost dead, but when he left
within days.
when he left the hospital, no paparazzi managed to pick up on him leaving.
No, and within days he was having wild parties in Downing Street.
Worldwide exclusive on the polling station. Just
literally nobody that works for the NHS managed to give us leak any details to the press about it as well.
Right,
non-disclosure agreements. Non-disclosure agreements.
Well, just back to you, William. I totally understand that he had nothing to do personally with those decisions. I was making a point about his responsibility for the organisation as a whole. Do you feel ashamed as a British person with the events that happened in Parliament and the behaviour of your Prime Minister when he got this report?
Oh God, yeah. But like that's been the case about once every 2 or 3 days since he got in, and a bit during the time he was Foreign Secretary, during which he did things like this every other week. And yet somehow still got the top job. I mean, no, it's deeply unedifying, to say the least, and it's also appalling that a lot of the people, and there were very many of them who suffered at the hands of these events, have had to relive it again, in a really nasty way. So no, it's bad. I think this again is a sort of long-term nail in the coffin, in the sense that even though I think the bar is quite a bit lower than it used to be, right? Like Johnson and his sort of tactics, I reckon probably would have been enough to go 10 years ago, definitely sort of in the early 2000s or whatever, and before then. But even now, there does become a time when you can still offend public decency to a very high extent. And it's interesting because the things that tend to unseat people now, it tends not to be policy decisions or whatever. It tends not to be reprehensible performance or, unacceptable failures of government. It can sometimes be the personal things. And all of this stuff in general, even if it might have worked as a really nasty tactic, I think in the long term, it's a bit of a black mark against Johnson. And also he can't afford to keep losing too many people from the inside of his operation. Right, there are only a certain amount of people I think he wants going, and Mirza definitely wasn't one of them.
Yeah, just Neil, Ruth Davidson was on, I think, later that evening, and she was reduced to tears at the end of her interview. On
I saw that. She's an utterly ridiculous human being.
I can't believe that. But just in terms of politics and like where politics is at the moment, how damaging is all this in terms of, if you're a young person now, why would you even care about politics when you see this buffoon like in charge?
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, I said to you, I think last week that as long as the Tories can get away with, they're all as bad as each other. If they start doing focus groups and people start saying these politicians, I hate them, rather than this Boris Johnson and his mates, I hate him, or these Tories, then that's a win for the Tories. Because people who are over the age of, I saw some vox popping the other day they did on Channel 4, and they were going up to people in red wall seats. It's pretty easy when you're doing this vox popping. If you go up to a bloke over the age of 60, he's probably a Tory voter in 2019. if you go up to a woman under the age of 30, she was probably a Labour voter. So it's fairly easy for them to profile people. And they were basically just going up to older people in red wall constituencies and saying, do you mind if I ask you if you voted Conservative and would you vote for them again? I think they spoke to 4 people and 3 of them were like, yeah, no problem. You know, there were two guys that they kind of looked like they would some kind of trade that they did, you know, painting and decorating or something. They had paint all over their clothes and they caught them in the high street. And one of them said, yeah, he's a laugh, isn't he? I mean, that was a thing you used to hear a lot that you haven't heard as much recently, but he was quite happy to say that on TV. I think, you know, you'd be amazed. Like, we follow the minutiae. Most people in the country have no idea who Munira Mirza is and wouldn't think of that as an interesting thing. We think it's quite a big story today. Yeah. You know, a lot of people, I don't know that this is really cutting through quite as much as people think. I mean, clearly, if you ask someone today, like the standard question, if there's a general election tomorrow, who do you vote for? You get that kind of thing where people might think, well, I would normally say Tory, but I don't want to say that because the person asking me the question might think I'm a terrible person for worrying about my house price when these guys were partying, when people were dying. But when they go into the sanctity of the polling booth, you know, there's a reason why they had a phenomenon of shy Tories. That wasn't a thing that came from nowhere.
There weren't any shy Tories at the last election, and in 2017 they were overestimated.
I think 2015 was when people really talked about shy Tories.
2015, the entire polling industry now admits that it was just systematically wrong for years, right? With overstating Labour, right? 2017, the Tories underperformed. 2019, I think that, to be honest with you, if anything, the way that the narrative has gone, there might be shy Labour voters because they turned Labour into the nasty party, the media, right? That's what it is. I don't think that necessarily applies. I don't think we're dealing with Trump here.
See if you say in some countries you've the right versus the left. In the UK you may have the right versus wrong, because the Labour is obviously not a left-wing party. But how has Keir Starmer handled this in terms of? I think he's been quite edified. I think he's
been excellent.
Yeah,
I think he's doing textbook opposition. Right, you have to stay out of the fray to a large extent, right, and you have to wait for your opponent to have a disaster, and then all you have to do when your opponent is having that disaster is just stand up straight, deliver the message, deliver the denunciation, be on the side of the majority. See, all the things about Corbyn, right, that people say he got right or wrong, the thing that I think was always missed out on, and what I think the real turning point for him, was that he didn't do that when May screwed up Brexit. There was a crisis moment in March 2019 where the Tories missed the Brexit deadline. And at that point, all those disengaged people, the people who decide elections, are suddenly looking and going, oh, the Tories aren't that competent, are they? They're not that great competent force like we thought they were, right? And that what Corbyn should have done then, but he didn't, he never did it really well on Brexit, was just stand up and be opportunistic and just say, you're an idiot. How did you get this wrong? You had one job. We even supported you. We voted for Article 50. Why did you fail? He didn't do that. And then consequently, we had local elections and the Lib Dems eating to the Labour vote, and it all just blew up.
Well, he was rather flawed leader. Last word to you, William Kedjanyi. We've had half an hour debate. We actually could be here all day. I can't already wait for next week. And we are ahead of a very interesting vote in Northern Ireland as well as France. The Northern Irish thing is going to be fascinating. Seen a bit of 6-1 about the DUP, which I'll talk about next week with another betting company. But William, last word to you on Sir, I can't even remember his name anymore. The last word to you on Boris. He's not Sir.
Last word on Johnson. I think the end may be coming nearer and nearer. Also, can I break a bit of news to end the show? Yes. Specifically with relation to you? Paul Given has resigned. So, yeah, everything is going well in Northern Ireland, he said, ending the programme.
You were going to say Paul Krishnamurty had resigned then.
So did I.
I was absolutely horrified.
Resigned from what? The man has so many jobs. I mean, bloody hell, and he's like going between here and there. That was the polling station. Northern Ireland is an enigma, wrapped it in an enigma that is the UK. These 4 enigmas have had enough for today. We'll be back next week.